Blessing's heart pounded as the door slammed shut behind her, trapping her inside the opulent mansion with Chief, an older man whose charm masked something far darker. The deal was simple: 1 night, 1 million naira. What she didn't know was that some bargains are sealed with blood, not money. By dawn, her body ached in ways it shouldn't, her skin covered in strange, painful marks. Then the dreams began. Twisted, suffocating visions that clouded her sanity. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Chief wasn't just a man, he was part of something ancient. And Blessing had just become its next victim. Blessing sat on the torn edge of her mattress, fingers curled around the fabric of her wrapper, as the power blinked off for the 3rd time that evening. The scent of kerosene from the neighbors' lanterns wafted through the window, mixing with the sound of her mother's dry cough in the next room. Rent was due. Her younger brother's school fees were hanging like a noose around her neck. The constant burden of survival clung to her like sweat in the Lagos heat. When Tenny called that night, her voice buzzing with excitement, Blessing didn't know that the conversation would alter her life forever. "Babe, I swear, it's like magic," Tenny had said, lounging across her own room, dressed in a silk robe Blessing had never seen before. "These men, they'll change your life in 1 night." 1 night! She giggled, tossing her weave over her shoulder, golden hoops gleaming under her ring light. "Chief gave me 500,000 after just dinner." Dinner, Blessing. Imagine what you could do with that. Blessing had forced a small laugh, but her chest ached. Tenny always made it sound easy, like luxury was a phone call away, like dignity could be mortgaged and bought back with transfer alerts. But something didn't sit right. Blessing still remembered the night Tenny had gone silent for 3 weeks. She'd returned thinner, quieter, with deep shadows under her eyes. Her glow had dimmed. "Malaria," she'd said, brushing off Blessing's concern. But one night, Tenny had whispered through trembling lips, "There are some things I can't explain, Blessing. Just pray I never meet that man again." And yet here she was now, urging her best friend to meet a man she once feared. For days, Blessing wrestled with her conscience. But the images wouldn't stop. Her mother selling pure water on the roadside with cracked heels, her brother begging for extra lessons he couldn't afford, the landlord's threats. Poverty had no mercy. That was how, on a Friday evening, she found herself seated at the edge of a plush hotel lobby in Victoria Island, her thrift store dress feeling tighter than ever, her palms slick with sweat. The place reeked of money, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, perfumed air. She'd never been anywhere like this. Her eyes darted nervously across the room, landing on couples laughing over wine, businessmen tapping on iPads, waiters gliding silently in black and white. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, checking the time. Chief Okafor was late. Her stomach twisted. Then she saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood just a few feet away in a frilly yellow dress. She wasn't smiling. Her hair was neatly braided into puffs, her eyes large and unblinking. She didn't belong here. No parents in sight, no shoes on her feet. Just standing there, staring directly at Blessing. Blessing gave a polite nod, even smiled. The girl didn't move. Instead, she took one slow step forward, tilted her head slightly, and in a voice soft as wind and sharp as glass, she whispered, "You're going to die tonight." For a moment, the world stopped moving. The clinking of glasses, the muted jazz music, the hum of conversation, all faded. Blessing blinked. "What did you say?" Her voice cracked, but the girl was gone. Vanished, like she'd never been there. A waiter passed in front of her, and the space where the child had stood was empty. A chill ran down Blessing's spine. Her hands shook as she reached for her glass of water. She must have imagined it. Maybe nerves were making her hallucinate. She looked around. No one else seemed to have noticed the girl. The receptionist typed away. A man in a suit scrolled through his phone. Life moved on undisturbed. Then her phone lit up. A message from Tenny. "He's there. Don't be scared. Just be polite. Say yes to everything." Blessing swallowed hard. Before she could respond, a deep voice called her name. "Blessing!" She turned. Chief Okafor stood tall in a flowing white kaftan, his Ibata crisp and his perfume so strong it clung to the air like incense. He smiled, too wide, too perfect, and extended a hand adorned with a massive ruby ring. His eyes were warm, but there was something in them. Something old. Something watching. As Blessing rose to greet him, her legs almost gave way. Her mind screamed to run, to flee the hotel, the city, this deal. But instead, she reached out and took his hand. Outside, the streetlights flickered once, then steadied. Inside, the shadows lengthened behind her. The elevator ride to the penthouse suite was silent, yet the air pulsed with invisible energy. Blessing stood beside Chief Okafor, her eyes fixed on the stainless steel doors, watching her own warped reflection. He hadn't said much beyond polite pleasantries, yet his presence felt overwhelming, like he took up more space than his body should. His cologne was rich, spicy, intoxicating, and it clung to her skin like smoke. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world so lavish it seemed plucked from a dream or a trap. Thick Persian rugs muffled their footsteps, and the soft hum of jazz spilled from unseen speakers. Expensive art adorned the walls, and candles flickered even though there was full electricity. A gold-framed mirror on the far wall caught her eye, but when she glanced into it, her reflection seemed a second slower than her movements. She looked away quickly. Chief poured them wine in long-stem glasses. "To destiny," he said, raising his glass. Blessing clinked hers against his, pretending confidence, though her hand trembled slightly. "You are special, my dear," he continued, settling into a deep armchair as though he were addressing royalty. "There's a fire in you. I saw it the moment Tenny showed me your picture." Blessing smiled nervously, taking a sip. The wine was sweet and heavy. Her tongue tingled. She noticed something strange. On the coffee table beside him was a red thread, coiled neatly like a snake. Chief picked it up and gently took her left wrist. "It's just for protection," he said, his voice suddenly grave. "My people believe in safeguarding what is valuable." Without waiting for permission, he tied the thread tightly around her wrist, muttering under his breath in a language she didn't recognize. Unease crawled up her spine. Blessing asked about the thread, trying to make her tone light. "It's just tradition," he replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Think of it as insurance against evil." The room dimmed slightly, though she hadn't seen anyone touch the lights. Her head felt heavy. Chief began to speak of power, lineage, sacrifice. His words grew vague and poetic, full of metaphors she didn't understand. She tried to focus, but her vision swam. Her skin prickled. She couldn't tell how much time had passed. Then he rose and extended a hand. "Come," he said simply. She followed. The bedroom was as elegant as the rest of the suite. King-size bed with silk sheets, a chandelier glowing above, thick curtains drawn shut. There was a bowl of white powder by the bed, and Chief walked around it in a circle before blowing softly into the air. The lights flickered. Blessing felt dizzy. As he approached her again, everything suddenly became fragmented. His face blurred, shifting. His eyes gleamed, not with lust or kindness, but something ancient and predatory. A cold wave of fear swept through her as he whispered something in her ear, and then darkness. She woke with a jolt, heart pounding. Morning light streamed weakly through the half-open curtains. Her body ached in places she couldn't explain. Her head throbbed. She sat up, disoriented, clutching the sheet to her chest. The red thread was still tied around her wrist, but now her skin beneath it was irritated and raw. She winced. Her eyes scanned the room. Chief was gone. On the dresser lay an envelope stuffed with money and a folded piece of paper. With shaking hands, she opened it. The note read, "You are chosen." Something in her stomach turned. The phrase was too final, too loaded. She stood slowly, noticing something else. On her abdomen, near her ribs, was a small scar she hadn't had before. Thin, curved, like a symbol. It burned slightly to the touch. Panic bloomed in her chest. She dressed quickly, her movements jerky, and left the hotel without another word. The driver waiting outside didn't speak to her. He merely nodded and dropped her off at the junction near her home. That night, exhausted and shaken, Blessing curled up on her mattress, trying to tell herself it was over. She had the money. She could pay the rent, buy medicine, send her brother to school. It was just one night. That's what she kept repeating. Just one night. But sleep didn't come easy. Her dreams were suffocating. Shadowy figures chanted in a language she didn't know, their eyes black and gleaming. Hands reached out from water, from mirrors, from beneath her bed. She woke drenched in sweat, breath ragged. The scar itched violently, but no matter how much she scratched, it remained. Around 2:47 a.m., just as she began to drift again, the air in her room shifted. The temperature dropped. A presence crawled into the room like smoke under a door. Suddenly, her ankle was gripped by ice-cold fingers. Her eyes flew open. There, at the edge of her bed, was Chief, his white kaftan glowing in the dark, his face half-shadowed. But the worst part wasn't that he was there. It was the fact that her door was still locked. Blessing didn't scream. She couldn't. Her voice had abandoned her, locked tight in her throat as Chief's cold hand gripped her ankle in the dark. For one impossible moment, they stared at each other, him kneeling by her bed like a ghost, his eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he vanished. Not into smoke or mist, not through the window or the door. He simply ceased to exist. The room fell into an eerie silence, the kind that presses on the skin. Blessing scrambled backward until her back hit the wall, panting, her heart a frantic drum in her chest. She sat there, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the spot where he'd been. By dawn, she still hadn't slept. The days that followed unraveled her slowly. It began with the changes in her body. Her skin grew pale, almost waxy, as though the blood beneath it was withdrawing. Her once bright brown eyes turned an eerie shade of gray, the color of rain-soaked ash. She lost weight rapidly, even though she was eating more than usual, always hungry, always craving something she couldn't name. Her mother grew worried, asking if she was sick, if she was pregnant. Blessing shook her head, but the truth was worse. She was dying in a way that no hospital could diagnose. Then the dreams came more violently. Every night she was dragged through unfamiliar places, swamps that whispered her name, forests where faces peered at her from behind trees, rivers with blood instead of water. She'd wake up gasping, sometimes screaming, clawing at the invisible hands she felt wrapping around her throat. One morning, she discovered claw marks on her back. Deep, real. Her sheets soaked in blood. She cried for hours, locking herself in the bathroom, trying to scrub her skin clean, but the marks remained. Tenny noticed. Of course she did. One afternoon, Blessing found her sitting outside, talking on the phone, voice shaky and low. "I didn't know it would be this bad," Tenny whispered. "She's changing too fast. He said it would take months." She paused, then added, "I don't think I can do this again. I feel it in me too. It's already started." Blessing's chest tightened. The words cut deeper than any wound. She stepped into view, and Tenny jumped, phone dropping to the ground. "Tenny," she said, her voice hollow. "What did you do?" Tenny broke. She fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching Blessing's skirt. "I didn't know," she wailed. "I thought he promised it would be safe. Just money and power. He said we'd be protected. But it's not just a man, Blessing. It's a spirit. He's something else. And once he marks you, there's no going back." Blessing yanked her hand away and ran. She didn't know where she was going until her legs took her to the prayer house her mother visited on Tuesdays. It was a humble building, cracked walls, plastic chairs, and a wooden cross above the door, but in her desperation, she hoped it held answers. The pastor, a soft-spoken man in his 50s, took one look at her and asked everyone to leave. He prayed over her for hours, oil dripping down her forehead as he shouted in tongues. At first, Blessing trembled, eyes rolling back. Then she screamed, a scream so guttural, so inhuman, it froze the air in the room. The pastor's voice faltered. His hands shook. Mid-prayer, he staggered backward, clutching his chest. He collapsed beside the pulpit, eyes wide in terror, mouth gasping for air. As people rushed in, he pointed at Blessing and whispered, barely audible, "It's in the bloodline. Not just her family. It's old." Then he passed out. They carried him away that evening, unconscious, and no one dared touch Blessing. She was cursed now in their eyes, marked by something bigger than sin. She walked home under the weight of shame and fear, her body cold despite the sweltering heat. That night, the wind wouldn't stop howling outside her window. Shadows clung to the corners of her room. Her red thread was now blackened, the skin underneath scabbed and weeping. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts unraveling. If this was a punishment, she didn't know what crime she had committed except being poor, except wanting to survive. At 3:12 a.m., her phone rang. She grabbed it, expecting Tenny, maybe her mother. The caller ID was blank. Her hand trembled as she picked up. There was a deep, distorted static on the other end. Then a rasping voice, slow and deliberate, like something speaking through centuries of dust and decay. "One down," it said. Blessing froze. "Your mother's next." The line went dead, and the silence that followed was louder than any scream. The river hissed under the moonlight, a long silver snake winding through darkness, whispering secrets only the dead understood. Blessing stood at the edge, barefoot, trembling, clutching the bundle Mama had wrapped in white cloth. Items for the ritual: charcoal, egg, bone, mirror, and a string of black beads said to belong to a long-dead priestess. Tenny stood beside her, pale and twitching, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool night air. The possession had progressed. Her eyes flickered red every few moments, and her voice, when she spoke, came layered, hers and something else underneath. But she had insisted on coming. Said she wanted to help. Said she needed to be free too. Blessing wanted to believe her. Mama began the chants, her voice deep and strong, cutting through the night like a blade. The trees swayed as if in time with the rhythm, the ground vibrating softly with each word. She motioned for Blessing to step into the river. "It must be you," she said. "You enter the covenant. You must break it with your own blood." Blessing hesitated, then waded in. The water was ice cold, biting at her skin. It rose to her waist, then her chest. She stopped when it reached her shoulders. "Speak your name," Mama called. "Blessing Nwokoye," she shouted, voice cracking. "Reject the bond." "I reject it. I reject him. I reject the darkness." A gust of wind whipped across the water, nearly knocking her over. Then the river grew still, unnaturally still. For a moment, everything stopped. No insects, no rustling trees, no sound. Then screams. From the river, from the sky, from the depths of Blessing's own mind. Shadows burst from the water, clawing at her arms, pulling her down. She thrashed, gasping, trying to scream. Hands gripped her ankles, her wrists, her throat. Faces emerged, twisted versions of herself, of Tenny, of her mother, laughing, crying, accusing. "Liar," one hissed. "Greedy," another spat. "Chosen," said the last, grinning with teeth too long, too sharp. Blessing plunged under. The water turned thick like oil. She couldn't breathe. She kicked, clawed, screamed underwater. Visions bombarded her, Chief's face, melting into a skull, her mother crying blood, Tenny dancing in fire. Then she saw the reflection again, the one from the mirror that didn't move with her. It stared, smiling. "Give up," it whispered, voice like hers but darker. "No," Blessing mouthed. She reached into the bundle, still clutched to her chest, pulled out the mirror and stared into it. "You are not me," she growled. Then she smashed the mirror against a rock beneath the water. It shattered with a burst of light. Above the surface, chaos erupted. Tenny screamed, high, inhuman, writhing on the riverbank as the entity inside her fought back. Mama held her down, chanting louder, voice raw. Shadows swirled around them, lashing out with invisible claws. One struck Mama across the face, drawing blood. She didn't stop. Then a roar. A car screeched to a halt nearby. Chief stepped out, glowing red eyes burning through the night, his white clothes now black as smoke. He moved inhumanly fast, gliding over the ground. "You dare defy me," he bellowed. "She is mine." Mama turned to face him, arms raised. "You are bound to the river. The covenant is broken." Chief snarled, but something slowed him. His steps faltered, his form flickered. Inside the water, Blessing glowed faintly, body limp, floating just below the surface. Then, without warning, the river surged upward, a great wall of water crashing into Chief. He screamed, caught in the wave, his form contorting, burning away like paper. Tenny collapsed beside Mama, unconscious but breathing. The shadows scattered. The night was silent again. Blessing floated ashore minutes later, barely breathing, her body scraped and bloodied. Mama rushed to her, pressing herbs against her wounds, chanting prayers through cracked lips. 3 days passed. When Blessing woke, She was in her own bed. Her mother sat beside her, eyes puffy from crying, whispering prayers. The red thread was gone. The scar had faded. Her eyes, brown again. Her body weak, but clean. Whole. They told her it was over, that she was free. She smiled weakly, grateful, cautious. She ate. She slept. The dream stopped. Tenny visited. Different now, quiet, slow to speak. Mama warned them both. Spirits don't die. They return when forgotten. Stay clean. Stay covered in light. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal. Until one evening, as Blessing got ready for bed, she caught a movement in the mirror. She turned quickly, nothing there. She leaned closer, breathing shallow. Her reflection stared back at her, calm. Then it blinked, only the reflection, and smiled. Its lips moved without her. "See you soon,"